Hey there, welcome back to Days of Archery. This is Ardian, the rock climbing archer, and it is another wet, windy day. But that's how we do it. It's always better to shoot arrows when they're not going to fly right. Because when you're accurate on that day, of course you're going to be accurate on a great day. Well, today with me, I brought my Galaxy Ember 45-pound recurve. Last video, I talked about if you're just starting out shooting, you don't have to buy a really expensive bow. This one, I just checked this morning, it still sells for about 200 bucks. It is a great bow. I still like my Bear better, and I think I shoot a bit more accurate with it. But part of that might be because my Bear is 65 pounds. And so when I draw and release, because it's such a high poundage bow, the release on the string is a lot cleaner. On a much lighter bow, it's easier to mess up and pluck the string. But if the string is providing enough resistance, the second you relax your fingers, it's going to just shoot that arrow. So a lot of it probably has to do with the high poundage of the Bear, but also Bear just manufactures their bows way better. For a $200 bow though, this does very well. Now I recommend you string your bow with a bow stringer. I'm just going to use the push-pull method on this one. Going to make sure the string is where it needs to be. I do want to talk about a couple of things though. Last time I kind of said a few words about arrow flight and tuning your bow. I didn't get into much of the specifics. So let me talk a little bit about that before we shoot anything. So last video I was talking about the flex of the arrow. Couldn't think of the word spine. That's what we use in archery. We talk about what kind of spine the arrow has. We talk about that because it relates to the archer's paradox. The archer's paradox is this. It's more evident on a bow that's not center cut. See this bow? It's got this shelf that's cut right there on the center usually. Now usually it's on the center, sometimes it's a little bit past center, but for the most part it's close enough to center that it doesn't matter. The paradox is this. If we are looking at this bow and this arrow in the resting position, especially if this riser was not cut to center, the arrow would be pointing to the left because the riser would be in the way. Yeah, so since this recurve is cut to center, it's not as evident that the arrow is pointing to the left. However, the arrow still is pointing a little bit to the left. That's what constitutes the archer's paradox. When at rest, the riser seems to be in the way. But when at full draw, the tip of the arrow gets further and further to the center. And so by the time you're at full draw and you're aiming your arrow, it's in a straight line with your target. But then when you release it, and that arrow flies into its resting spot, why doesn't the arrow just skip off the riser? How is it able to go in a straight line? And that's where tuning the arrow comes into play. Because what allows the arrow to fly straight is that as you release the arrow will first bend into your riser like this. And then as it's being pushed by the string, it'll bend the other way. It'll go around your riser and in a straight line. And that's why the spine of the arrow is so important. If your arrow is too stiff, it's not going to bend enough. If it doesn't bend enough, it is going to skip to the left from your riser. It's not going to be able to curve around it and then go in a straight line. And so it will bend. If your arrow is too soft, it'll flex too much. It could also hit the riser if it flexes too much, but usually if it flexes too much, it'll flex and it'll go to the right. You won't be able to control these arrows. So when we talk about tuning a bow, we're mostly talking about tuning the flexibility of our arrows so that it flexes just enough to go around our riser and follow that straight line trajectory. Of course, it's a lot easier to tune a bow with a center cut like this. But don't think because it's center cut you're not going to have to tune it. Oh boy, you will, if you want to be accurate. If you want to hit a barrel though, from 15 yards, you'll be able to do it without even tuning it. Just a big box target like that, you'll be able to hit it if you practice enough. But your groupings will never be small enough to consistently hit a cup or a tennis ball or something. And why not do something right? If you're gonna, look man, if you're gonna get into archery and shoot arrows, let me tell you, it is a lot more fun if your arrows fly straight. Okay, it really is. So, take the time to tune your arrows. Now it's a bit more complicated than just saying tune your bow and your arrows. Where would we start exactly? Like I said in my previous video, I wouldn't consider myself an expert in the field. But I think I know enough that I can teach you something. The best place to start is to decide what kind of bow you want to shoot. Now I shoot a recurve. It's a magnificent bow to shoot. You shoot a long bow, which means it doesn't have the curves at the tips here. But pretty much, the technique is going to be the same. So decide on that, decide on the bow. If it's going to be something like this, I recommend the Galaxy Ember. It's a pretty good beginner bow. Samick Sage as well usually does very well. Might even be a little bit cheaper than this, but even though these are relatively cheap bows, they work well. They will be accurate enough for you to hit targets and even hunt with if the poundage is right. If you're a beginner, get you a low poundage bow, 25, 30 pounds. Don't care how strong you are, 25, 30 pounds. 35 pounds maximum. You really don't want to go any higher than that if you've never shot arrows before. And you'll need to look at a chart of the poundage of your bow, how far back you're going to pull, which is your draw. And that chart will give you an idea of the spine of your arrows. It'll depend on whether you're using carbon arrows or aluminum. I like aluminum arrows, so I'm going to recommend those. But for this, for example, my spine is 2018. It's just a number. I'm not sure exactly what it means. I used to know a few years ago, but I've forgotten so much about this stuff. But anyway, what you'll get is you'll buy an arrow that's not fletched, it doesn't have a knock, and it doesn't have a tip or anything on it. It'll just be a shaft. So you'll have to put all this stuff on it, and you're just gonna have to learn how to do it if you want to really shoot well or try to shoot accurately. If you don't think you can do this stuff by yourself, then go to an archery shop and I'm sure they'll help you. But basically what you want is you want an arrow that's longer than your final arrow, because when it's a long arrow, it's going to flex a lot more. And when you shoot, you want to start shooting off an arrow that's flexing too much. The reason is that a long arrow we can cut, and that'll stiffen it up. The more we cut from the length, the stiffer the arrow gets. And that's how you tune your bow. Get a rough idea from your research what kind of spine you need for your bow. You buy uncut shafts, and then you start shooting these uncut shafts without any fletching. I recommend you shoot it at a target that's kind of soft, because when you shoot it, it's going to fly sideways, and when it hits that target, it can snap. Now, aluminum arrows are pretty tough, I would say, so it's probably not going to happen, but get you a soft target if you can, and then shoot a few, and you'll see it fly. Well, we got to shoot some arrows. I'm out here talking, and I just don't have that much time. Well, that was a very bad shot. Okay, that was a little bit better. Yeah, it feels off. Something's off with his bow. The wind's picking up pretty bad too. Whoa, yeah, it's windy. But whatever, we're gonna shoot a few anyway. We're just gonna shoot on the 15 today. Okay, not too bad on that one. Kind of feel like these arrows aren't tuned with a bow, but they are. I tuned them a long time ago. Might have been might have been 6 or 7 years ago that I tuned this bow. I feel like I might be plucking the string a little bit. On a day like this, it's hard to tell if the wind is making the back of the arrow fly weird or if it's just me. We'll shoot a few more. Another piece of advice: you're not going to be able to tune your bow, your arrows in a day, especially if you're new to shooting. That is not going to happen because it will take a while for your technique to get good enough. And as your technique changes, your arrow flight changes as well. If you tune your bow to your bad technique, and then your technique starts improving, your arrows are going to be out of tune again with your bow. So you got to have a lot of patience in the beginning. Do the best that you can. Don't fletch all your arrows. Always keep one of your arrows unfletched so you can see its arrow flight. That way you can see your mistakes. Just expect that if you start shooting consistently, you're probably going to be tuning and revisiting tuning your bow that first year. And if you stop shooting for a long time, everything might get out of tune again. And the main reason is not because something changes in the bow, assuming you store it correctly, but because your shooting technique changes a little bit. I think that's what's going on with me in this bow. I think my shooting technique changed a little bit. Something's a little bit off, and so I think the back of my arrow keeps jumping to the left. I'm not entirely sure. But for me to really know, I would have to take the fletching off and start from the beginning. I'm just not going to do that. Haven't been shooting it long enough this year. I've only been shooting now for probably maybe 3 weeks, 3 times a week. So I'm still working on my technique. I'm not gonna tune anything yet, but I feel like my bear is definitely tuned. This one, not so sure. But again, it could just be my technique. So I guess that's the take home. I guess that's the take home for this video. Take what I said about tuning your bow. Do your own research a little bit, because I only gave you an introduction to the archer's paradox and what it means tuning your bow. Do your own research, and we'll talk more about this in later videos. For now, let's see if we can get consistently hitting this yellow on the 15. Okay. Well, I think I got the yellow. Getting some good shots, but not consistently. I do find though, if I can be accurate with this bow, and my accuracy with my bear definitely just gets better and better. Okay, that was good. Okay. I feel like when I do everything right, it does fly correctly, so it could just be me. I could be plucking the string. After all, I do rock climb. That's the thing that I do, and so we train our fingers all the time. Maybe my fingers are just a bit too strong on the string, and so instead of it releasing perfectly, I'm pulling it and it's making it go in different directions. Now that's another thing. The string doesn't just come back and then release when you let go of it perfectly. When you grab it and you pull, it's actually rolling the string some. And when you release, the string kind of rolls back and it shoots the arrow that way some. And I mean, that's the thing. You don't just tune an arrow to your bow, you also tune it to your shooting style, to your fingers. And it could be as sensitive as how much pressure do you put on these fingers? How much pressure do you put on this finger? Do you put more pressure on these fingers, or do you put more pressure on this finger? All this stuff matters if you really want to be accurate. It's crazy. Oh man, you can drive yourself nuts just tweaking and working out all the little details. But that's what makes it fun though. Yeah, I think this bow might just really show me my mistakes, which is good. I'm gonna focus more on my release. My release might be bad, so let's go. Okay, that's better. That was better. Where it felt better, got better arrow flight. I think I'm still plucking the string. I can feel it. I can feel myself plucking the string. Quiver. Yeah. Told you, I'm not an expert at this kind of stuff. I mean, obviously, with the way I'm shooting right now. All right, come on now. There we go. Okay, it's better. Well, if we can get another one in the yellow, we're gonna call it quits for today. Yeah, guess we're calling it quits. That's 3 in the yellow. Not too bad. It's a pretty good bow. Not my most accurate bow. But then again, I'm not sure if it's just me, arrows, the wind, or the bow. We may never know. All right, you guys have a good day. Get out there, shoot some arrows, and enjoy it. I'll see you next time.